If we don't step up to the plate and be professional firefighters and start focusing on risk acceptance versus risk avoidance, that model's not going to work. If we keep looking for more excuses to fight less fire versus justification to fight more fire, our citizens, and bet money on this, I'll bet my reputation, our citizens are going to tell us how we're going to fight fire.
Firehouse Vigilance presents The Weekly Scrap, a podcast dedicated to the never-ending fight against complacency. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance, Weekly Scrap number 178. Tonight's guest is a longtime friend of the scrap and one of my favorite people, Chief Scott Thompson. He is the fire chief of the Colony Fire Department down in Texas. He's the author of the Functional Fire Company. He travels, he teaches, he writes complete programs when it comes to fire service on the subject of mentoring, training, and then he just gives them away. Just call him and he'll give them to you. He is the definition of leave it better than you found it. My brother, Scott Thompson, it is my pleasure to have you on as the guest this evening. Welcome to Scrap number 178.
Thank you, Corley, my brother. It's always great to come on. I always look forward to it, and you're very kind with your introductions, probably more than I deserve. But, yeah, I'm a terrible business person. I give stuff away, but that's okay.
The model is not, what do you call it, fiscally responsible? Is that the
Yeah, it's not fiscally responsible.
Anything I missed in the intro? Anything? There's so much to say, but anything you would like to add that I left out?
No, sir. Let's get right to scrapping. Nobody's worried about that other stuff. Let's just talk about the fun stuff.
Audience, get your questions primed and ready. Kyle Romagus is here. He is curating the questions. He will be throwing them at me. Go to firehousevigilance.com, become a part of the Vigilantes, $5 a month, get the exclusive stuff. That's fine. We just added the ability to sign up for a year at a time if you don't like monthly subscriptions. So let's pay the bills and let's get this on. First up, this episode is brought to you by Key Hose. Check them out on Facebook, The Hose Experts. Then the Affordable Drill Tower. Firefighter owned and operated. The only thing you can't do in an affordable drill tower is live fire. Affordable Drill Tower. You can rappel, stretch hose lines, go through the stairs, go through the floor, do window bailouts, cut holes in the roof props, use the apartment balconies, pump into the FDC, or flow water from the sprinkler system. Call Steve, 844-55-TOWER, or drop an email to info@affordabledrilltowers.com. And we got a brand new sponsor tonight. I'm really excited. FDIC International is taking over Indianapolis April 24th through the 29th, and you have to be there to experience it. No other event brings together the fire service industry like FDIC. Over 30,000 fire service professionals, hands-on training covering the latest in technology and technique, an expansive conference program, nearly 800 leading manufacturers displaying their products and services. It's not a regular trade show. It's FDIC International. Register today at FDIC.com and use the promo code SCRAP, S-C-R-A-P. Okay, final one, and I love them. John Spear, one of my favorite people on the planet. Fit to Fight Fire believes that your level of mental and physical fitness will make the difference between life and death for others, leading us to train our minds and bodies daily. Head on over to fittofightfire.com. Join a community built on hard work and accountability. You will be given a workout of the day, daily inspiration, monthly training, and community working together to get better. Fittofightfire.com. Cannot knock it. Okay, with all that being said, like Chief Thompson said, let's get to scrapping. My brother,
get it.
There's so much I like to throw at you, and I'm going to lead it off with, and I talked to you about it earlier. I want to start off with a mantra of yours that is very near and dear to my heart, developing a fire-first culture.
So, I started thinking about culture, 2003, 2004, and kind of stumbled on it by accident. I spent a lot of time traveling around the country since 1985, visiting what I considered high-performance fire companies, and I'd kind of pay attention to what was going on in those firehouses. And so this culture thing kind of kept coming around, and so I decided to look into it a little bit, to do some research. I kind of chose some people that I wanted to read and follow, and it kind of just took off. And so when I got to the colony, I've been there 14 years now. I kind of had this crazy idea to commit to a chosen culture. And we've talked about it before, but basically, an organization, you got one or two choices. You can accept the culture that's going to exist. All organizations have one. Hope it's a good one. Or you can pursue a chosen culture. And so that was what we decided to do. And a big part of that was to kind of buy into this, let firefighters be firefighters, and what I call a fire first preparedness culture.
Right.
And if you think about it, Corley, the greatest, I talked about this the other day also, the greatest investment made in any fire department organization is in its fire suppression and fire rescue capabilities. We don't get funded more for anything else. You figure fire trucks, and engines, rescue squads, whatever you call them, firefighters, protective clothing, our BAs, a breathing apparatus, our thermal imagers, all the hose. So that's the greatest investment that our taxpayers make in our organization. So to me, it just kind of made sense to kind of put out this fire first preparedness culture and kind of make that the center of our attention. Whether we're training or we're developing fire operation guidelines and all those things. So we've been doing that now, like I say, for close to 14 years. It's worked very well for us. And it kind of packaging like that, it kind of gives you an idea, kind of a mental image of what the culture is about. And so that's kind of how it got started. I think it's still going very strong. It certainly has helped us with our recruitment and our retention. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We just had a captain's camp where we did the Colony Project 2. And so we revisited all of this. We redefined kind of our purpose, our mission. We looked at our core values, our leadership and operational philosophies. And we decided we want to stick with it. And we're going to, pursue that for the next 7 or 10 years.
That's awesome. So the revisit, man. No, that's cool. And there's so many things I want to dig into on it. But initially, when you kind of said I'm going to do fire first preparedness culture, was there an initial pushback? What was the initial reception? I should say, not pushback, but reception of it.
Well, we had so many changes going early on. Part of that was going to that engine and truck deployment model. So this was all part of that same kind of movement in our history. So there was a little bit of pushback on that. I had some very senior members here, 30-plus members that were my shift commanders. And, they viewed it as, hey, that's big city stuff. It's never going to work in the suburbs because, face it, not many suburban departments really have that strict engine and truck commitment. And so there was a little pushback early on, but once the organization kind of started to see that fires were going better, that they were much more coordinated, and that everybody kind of came off the rigs with a purpose and a direction, it caught on pretty quick. Right
on, man. See, I'm looking at the comments. Hey, I absolutely check in. I like the TN times 2. 2 Tennessee. Someone said Tennessee checking in, then someone said TN times 2. It'd be awesome. Every place you check in, like, let's see who can get the highest X number. That would actually be kind of cool. So we're gonna make that a thing. Like when you check in from whatever state you're at, put the X number next to it. And so that man, there's so many things I want to ask you about the engine and truck model, especially suburbia, because like you said, it doesn't exist. And me and you have talked about this before, driving around different various cities, saying, the average American fire service. I like to say I am the American Fire Service. I'm a 4-station city with 66 guys on the line,
yep.
and we have quints. We're blessed in a lot of ways, but that's like actually better off than a ton of the American Fire Service, first of all. But a lot of them is even smaller than that. And so talk to me about the engine and truck model being developed. Oh, lots of questions coming at you too. So go with that first, and then I'll get to the questions.
Yeah, so we have the colony is made up of what's referred to as Fox boxes, right? They're these 1,000 to 1,200 square foot homes. They're small. They're kind of cheaply built. And so one of the challenges that I was confronted with early on was, how do we minimize our zero impact period, the time from when we set our parking brake to when we start solving problems on those fires? Because the window of opportunity for anybody in those buildings is very small. And so we had to figure out a way to do a lot of things simultaneously. Blue card would never work in the colony. We don't have the time to stage up the street and assign everybody. We had to figure out a way that when we got on scene, everybody went to work. And so we committed to this engine and truck deployment model. The engines do engine work, the trucks do truck work. And more importantly, truck guys are assigned to the truck, engine guys to the engine, and very rarely do they cross over. I mean, there's some opportunities to do that. But it also helps us build experience in our members kind of doing the same thing, getting the sets and reps. You know, if we have a fire tonight and I have a crew go to the roof, I know that it's going to be a crew that's the most recently rehearsed.
Right
it's
on.
the crew that's done it the last however many fires we've had over the years. And so it just really, really worked. And the guys really started to buy into it. And it provides all kinds of advantages. You know, a firefighter can come in at shift change and start preparing for the next fire call. And so you give some mental advantages. There's the pre-arrival kind of rehearsal where, you know, that 3 or 4 or 5, 6 minute it takes us to get on scene. They can kind of start updating the hard drive and start going through a mental process. And so when they step off the rigs, they're ready to go to work. The other thing that does is it kind of keeps the anxiety level low. And I won't get into a big spiel about survival stress reaction, but that could prove critical in the event that a firefighter gets in a bind, thinks he or she is in trouble, and that anxiety starts to build. Our bodies start to work against us. We start to get tunnel vision or deer in the headlight.
Right.
Fine motor skills start to decrease. Our gross motor skills increase. And so all that plays into this engine and truck deployment model. And as you know, it's worked so well that we put a squad in service a couple of years ago, and we kind of took it to the next level. So now we run engines and trucks, and we have this FDNY style heavy squad that plays right into it. And the squad can do engine work or truck work, and those members have experience riding the engine and riding the truck before they get assigned to the squad. So for our little 18 square mile, 5-station department, it works really well, and it provides us that window of opportunity to really take advantage of on those smaller homes and give anybody who might be inside the greatest chance of surviving.
I love it, man. I love the fact that you tied it all back to that first metric, which is what gives them the best chance. Coming at you from Daniel Shaw, he wants to know, Chief, how long did it take for you to start seeing a shift in the culture, and when did you know you had turned the corner? Was there a point?
Yeah, so any cultural change takes on the low end 18 months. I always say 18 to 24 months once you initiate an attempt to change the culture. And really, the first indicator of what the culture is and that the culture is changing is in casual conversation. You start to hear the chosen culture talked about in firehouse talk around the kitchen table and so forth. And so that's really the first sign that the message is getting out there. What's really cool now is we've been doing it so long that as we start to hire people that have never belonged to the organization, they come in for their interviews, and we start to hear a lot of the things that our culture values repeated back in their interviews. So it takes some time. You have to be patient. You can't rush it. You got to be very deliberate. You got to kind of nurture it along and cultivate it, and you got to take advantage of momentum when you get it. But I would say about 18 to 24 months, and you're really going to start to notice the change when you hear the things that the culture valued being talked about by the members of the organization.
So when you start hearing the casual language, especially, start to espouse it?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's strong. That's strong, brother. That's strong.
And culture, the most basic definition is culture is really what the group values, but it's also, I suppose, values and assumptions and rituals and routines and artifacts.
Yeah, artifact, yes.
All those behaviors, all those play into it.
I love it. How much
Good
pride?
question.
No, it was a great question from Daniel Shaw. And I want to say, I want to get back to the squad 18. How much pride and esprit de corps does the squad bring in your opinion? Like, obviously you're a huge fan of it, but was it as successful, more successful, or Like what's your thoughts on it now that it's been in effect?
Well, it's for us, it's very successful. So we moved the tower ladder down the south of the city when we opened Station 4, and that's where our mid rises and all that. So it left a need in the middle of town, and we have very, very small streets, a lot of difficulties getting access. And so when we sat down and we started talking about how are we going to replace that truck function, the squad was the most realistic answer to that. And it's a rescue pumper. It's got basically the same equipment as the tower ladder has on it, minus the aerial. And so it's worked extremely well. As you know, Andy Fredericks has had a huge influence on the Colony Fire Department. We do something every Friday called Fredericks Friday. We've been doing that for years. And so one of my members, Mark Bond, came to me and said, "Hey, Chief, we're talking about putting this squad in service. What do you say we number it 18 after Andy Fredericks?" And I said, "Man, what a brilliant idea." Sometimes as Chief, all you got to do is say yes. Yeah. You know, the men and women will bring you a lot of great ideas, and sometimes all you got to do is say yes. And so we did that, and I think, many out there know Stephen Giles and Justin Fraze. Those are just a few of the guys that are on the squad, and they've really taken my very elementary vision and ran with it and made it more than I ever really thought it would be. So tremendous ownership, and I think they're very proud to be a part of it. They're kind of one of the go-to companies on a fire when things are getting a little dicey. I can look to those guys, and we typically run it with 4, and they can split and do a lot of things. And so it's kind of a security blanket. That there's a lot of pride on those members, but we hold them accountable to perform at a high level. If you're not buying in, if you're not into the training and the way that it operates, you're not going to stay on the squad. It's not a guaranteed position. We're going to put somebody else on there who's like-minded and has got the type of mindset that we want to make that thing work at a very high level.
Sorry, I have to write down the soundbite moments. And one thing, everybody listening, right now there's 145 people listening live, but everybody take that clip right there. I'm gonna make it into a soundbite and release it where it says sometimes most of the time all the chief has to do is just say yes with the passionate people. I'm butchering your quote that I heard like 2 minutes ago, but 100% you take that, play it. We'll make the American Fire Service better tomorrow. So, okay,
well,
coming at you.
Okay, go ahead.
No. I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, saying no is the safe answer, right? If we're talking about risk avoidance, saying no really limits your exposure. But we just say yes, and some great things, like I say, the squad being one of them, and a few other things. And so, if you listen to your members and you kind of give them the things they need, they'll take care of a lot of really awesome things, and not only solve some problems, but do some things that, heck, I would never think about.
Right on. Coming at you, more questions. What rank is the company officer of the squad?
Captain. Captain on the squad. We got a captain, an apparatus operator, and 2 firefighters assigned to the squad.
So it's the same as an engine, same as the ladder. Yes.
Well, now the ladder, we run a 5-person truck. So on the truck, we have a captain, 2 apparatus operators, and 2 firefighters assigned to the truck. Which
makes me want to ask this question, which comes from Brian Brillmeyer. I hope I got your name right because I'm reading it there. But can Chief Thompson talk about how they decided to go to a TDA? Tractor drawn aerial.
Well, yeah, we've talked about it for a long time, and we actually considered it prior to buying the mid-mount tower ladder. We just didn't have the staffing. I'm not going to put a TDA in service and run it with just 3 people. We're not. Danny Dwyer was put in that situation, and he made the best of it. But one of the things that I had a conversation with my boss is that we really need to do it for accessibility, but we really need to improve our ground ladder game. I mean, our future is ground ladders and the stuff that they're building. And so we really want to increase our ground ladder inventory. We needed to buy a rig that we could get into some tight spaces. And so it just took some time to get our staffing to a point to where we can put it. So now Like I say, when we put it in service, we right off the bat we'll have a captain, 2 drivers, and 2 firefighters assigned to it. To me, that's an ideal staffing model for running a
Right
TDA.
on. Right on.
But we're just now putting the final touches on it, and we're probably not going to take delivery of it for 2 years. But we're looking very seriously, possibly going with a sea grave, which is real unique in Texas. But and it's going to be a dry truck. And so we have a group that the truck captains are working on it with Chief Rice, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And I'm excited every day when they update me and show me where the division's going with it.
Awesome. Some people are saying they're losing video. Just refresh if you have to. Right now, all the numbers look good here, so it might just be a Facebook hiccup. So keep on hitting it. Got the rank. I'm getting the questions coming at you here. Refreshing. How do you pick, Brian, same guy, Brian Braumeyer wants to know, how do you pick the guys that you put on the squad? Is there a process?
Yeah, I leave the staffing really up to the shift commanders. They're in the best position to know the capabilities. But on the truck and the squad, like we're when we open, getting ready to open Firehouse 5, so there's a lot of moves. So they will put together their team for the squad, and then they'll run it by myself and the ops chief, and we kind of give it a blessing, or we'll have a conversation and we'll talk about it. But they're kind of handpicked, and when we kind of first started it, we picked the captains, and they had some input on who their drivers were going to be and some of their firefighters. And so we try to get as much of that team involved as we can, so that there's some ownership. Team chemistry is very important. And so that's kind of how it goes. But the shift commanders really take the lead on it, and then kind of propose their staffing recommendations to myself and Shannon Stevens, who's my ops chief. And more times than not, we give a thumbs up and endorse it. But every once in a while, we kind of offer a suggestion on maybe another position, another person filling that position.
Okay, here we go. Getting back to the questions. Did you ever have anyone in your department not wanting to buy in? And this is, I know you get this question a lot, but if so, how did you handle it?
Oh, we do. The city does kind of surveys throughout the year. We just did one. It's called Engage the Colony, that our HR department puts out. And there's a handful that really aren't buying in. They don't like the fact that we do some of the things we do, and probably think it's a little over the top to have this real strict engine and truck deployment model and putting this FDNY squad on, and so, yeah, there's a couple, and we have conversations, but again, that's something we kind of leave up to the company officers to manage, and it works itself out. I haven't had any just flat out resistance that says, hey, we're not doing this. It's more questions, and we try to provide the why and answer those questions. But Corley, I'll just be honest, for our little city, and especially since we went to our new hose package with the True ID and the smooth bores, I mean, our fires are going pretty good. And I think the whole organization sees that. I mean, we have bad days like everybody else, but compared to the operations the way they were and where they are today, I mean, for our little suburban city, I think we kind of really found the combination and the ingredients to maximize our capabilities, the things that have been given to us, and do the most with what we have. When we bought these new engines, we totally redesigned our engines, and we brought Dennis Laguerre in and said, hey, we got these new engines. Teach us how to maximize these things and get the most out of them. And we're going to do the same thing when we get the TDA in. So, no, there hasn't been any really hard resistance. I think it's kind of sold itself just because of the commitment of the men and women that are in the organization making it work. And like I say, our fires are going pretty good.
Right on. Okay. Kyle Ramos wants to know, can you discuss the interview question that you ask applicants that relates to the wind-driven fire that you had?
Yes. And it's amazing. And, there's probably some people that don't believe it, but we had a fire a couple of years ago, and it came in at 7 o'clock in the morning. reported people trapped, and it was in a modified Fox box. It was kind of two Fox boxes connected. And so, when a fire comes in at shift change, everybody gets on the rigs.
Right.
To make kind of a long story short, reported two people trapped. Travis Harden and Chisholm Rosshuber was the captain on engine 11. They got on scene. And so they stretched the first line, and their goal was to get in between. We allow our squad and truck company to search ahead of the line. So, the truck is committing in there. Now we got a line in there. And again, our new hose package, we're flowing 160 gallons per minute. One of the faults, and the captain will agree to this, is he didn't do a complete 360. He did. There were some fences. He did the best he could. This started as a exterior fire. And as they were making their push, the sliding glass door broke out, and we had winds coming at us at about 16 miles per hour. So now it became a wind-driven event. And so the engine crew really had no choice. If they would have bailed, that truck crew would have been in trouble. So they had the line wide open, and they weren't making much progress. Finally, we got the search crew out of there, and they called a mayday. And there's a side note here to those that are listening. You may teach your people, I guess the best term is to preload the room, to load hose into the room so that they can advance quicker. And there's nothing really wrong with that, unless you teach your people to follow the line out if they get in trouble, which everybody does. Well, you can't teach both. So in this situation, our door control was somebody who typically rides a truck, and the college that he teaches at, they teach, loading the room. And when engine 11 got in trouble and they were following the line out, they came to this extra hose, and that's when they called the mayday.
Right.
So it was a wind-driven event in which they had to stay in that flow path operating, or we would have possibly lost some members. So what we did is we looked at that, and we were kind of asking the question, but we didn't have a real good scenario. So now when we hire somebody, we use that exact scenario. We're sitting there, we're saying, hey, if you get hired, your first day, you will be assigned to an engine company. Your first tour, you catch a fire, and you're going to be the initial tack line. You're going to have to put yourself between the fire and the victims, and you're going to be forced to operate in the flow path. It's a wind-driven event. There's a high probability you will be burned, which is what happened to Travis. Travis was not critically burned, but he went to the burn unit, had some skin grafts. And we asked, are you willing to take this level of risk? It's a very real scenario. And 3 out of 10 say no. They say we're not willing to take that risk. Right. Now, our friend Mike Walker was interested in that question, and he was, I don't know if he's still doing, was asking a similar question in OKC. And he would follow it up and say, if your family was in there, would you take that risk? And some that said no now say yes. Now we got an integrity issue.
Right.
So it's pretty revealing, I think. The backside of that is, now with that knowledge, I really can't let those people onto the fire department. I mean, it's not bad people doing bad things, but I think my citizens would have a difficult time understanding me bringing somebody on to this organization where we're expected to take risks at a professional level, to bring somebody on who's admitted that I'm not willing to take that level of risk. So we got to pass on those folks. And like I say, about 30%, 3 out of 10 will say, and we've been doing this now for several years, and it's held pretty true.
Absolutely.
Does anybody who's listening know if Chief Walker, if they're still asking that question in OKC?
Man,
I'm curious.
As of the point where my son got hired on there, they were still asking the question. So that was about he's got 15 months on the job now. So as of 15 months ago, they were, and I don't think there's any reason why they've switched in the last 15 months.
Some people argue, well, the way that they're taught in the fire academy and so forth, but I just think it's a great question to prompt some discussion. Like I say, it's held pretty true to us. We're pretty passionate about it. We ask it with every group. And, I'm surprised that it hasn't gotten out how to answer that, but it hasn't yet. But that's the story behind it, and it's based on an actual event.
Right on, man. Right on, 100%. Okay. What hose package are you running for the 2.5-inch attack package. John McCoy was wondering about your 2.5.
Yeah. I mean, we're growing the True ID. We're 100% smooth bores. That's done us. It's worked really well for us. We've like I say, we've had success with it, and so we're going to continue to do that. Dennis Laguerre reached out to us when he initially was going to the hose manufacturers and trying to get that True ID hose, and so for us, it's worked really well.
Awesome. This comes from Jeff Stone. I love Jeff Stone. He has a great question. Chief, can you talk a little bit about how a shift level chief officer balances guiding culture at the shift or battalion level versus allowing company level culture to develop under the leadership of company officers?
Okay.
What's the balance?
So let me talk about the layers of culture first. Is there's a macro culture, which is the American Fire Service, an occupational culture, which none of us have much influence over that. Then there's an organizational culture, and that's what makes the Colony Fire Department a little bit different than Moore Fire Department, the things that we value. But then we start talking about subcultures and microcultures, right? So the subculture is shifts, battalions, and supervisors. So if you think about it, those of you out there that are company officers, there's things that you do every day that aren't in policy or procedures or anything. You just do it because that's the way you do it. Well, that's part of your subculture, your supervisory subculture. So shift commanders have a tremendous amount of influence over what their subculture values. And then we go into the firehouse, and those are microcultures. That's the firehouse, the fire company, or a specialty unit. You know, you're riding a rescue or a squad or whatever, and the company officer has the greatest influence. So you can have a tremendous influence, but the thing is you have to value also what the culture above you values. If not, you're setting your people up for failure. There can't be this radical difference between the organizational culture and the subculture or the microcultures, or we're allowing people to drift towards failure. So yes, you can have a tremendous influence, but this is what's important, and I think this is where a lot of fire service leaders struggle. Is you got to first of all define a vision of success, so you know what you're working towards every day. When
Right.
you kind of can envision what the end result looks like, it's kind of this whole reverse engineering thing. And you can start to identify the knowledge, skills, abilities, and attitudes it takes to get there. And in doing that, you have a discussion about what you want your microculture or your subculture to value. And if the group is in agreement with that, then you've got to become role models and advocates for the process and kind of live it every day. And little by little, that will become part of you. And so, once you decide what you want the culture to value, then you can pursue it. You got to be patient. You got to live it every day. You've got to take advantage of momentum. You've got to explain the why, and you've got to keep everybody in the process so that they feel connected to what you're trying to do, and then just keep chugging along, and it starts to take root. And pretty soon it kind of becomes self-sufficient, and that's how you sustain it.
Right on, man. Right. And I don't think I've heard a better breakdown of micro, macro, and the sub and the mini. And I mean, it's layers down. But if you don't define what success, I love it, brother. Love the question, Jeff. John Velez Jr. wants to know: without a formal mentorship program at the department level, is there anything at a crew shift level we can do to implement a more formal mentorship program? And before Chief answers, I'll say go to fireserviceleadership.com and download Chief Thompson's mentoring program that he gives away for free. Absolutely, that's where I would start. But that's what I will say first, and then say go, Chief Thompson.
So let's define the difference between mentoring and coaching. Coaching is dealing with the here and now. So let's say we're going to go out. We have 28-foot extension ladders. So let's say the drill of the day is going to go out. It's going to be a one-person throw of a 28. So the senior man or woman goes out and demonstrates it and explains it, answers questions. Then everybody goes. You get immediate feedback. You go again until you meet the standard. Mentoring positions people for long-term success in the organization. Now, I have nothing in the world against traditional mentoring, those organic relationships that form between a senior man or woman, and a junior man or woman. Those are great. The reason why I've kind of focused on formal mentoring processes is so that everybody in the organization can benefit from a mentoring relationship. And I say this, and I say it with great confidence. I believe that mentoring is the future of fire service leadership and learning. And those organizations that embrace a formal mentoring process, a process that is accessible to everybody in the organization, are going to have a much easier time navigating future challenges than those that don't. So you know I'm very, very passionate about it. And if we're talking about pursuing a chosen culture, you cannot pursue a chosen culture and you cannot have a mentoring program without some standards. And you've got to give mentors the tools and so
Yes.
forth, and it's got to be supported from the chief. So all of this really ties in together. Probably the quickest way to implement a chosen culture is through a mentoring program where you have people who understand what you're pursuing and they're advocates for the process, and they help everybody understand what you're trying to do. So mostly all mentors are coaches, but not all coaches are mentors. But mentors really about positioning people for long-term success in the organization.
Love it, man. I'm looking at questions coming at me from Kyle. Small town combo department. Darren Harmon wants to know, small town combo department. POV to the station, on truck to scene, or drive POV to scene. What's your thoughts? Do you prefer POV to scene or POV to station?
So when I was in Athens, Texas, they had POVs to scene, and I would have to get police to run a license plate check for my accountability system. I didn't know who was there and who wasn't there. I've worked in systems where I could take my POV to the scene, others where I could not. The important thing is you got to have some discipline, right? If people are allowed to take POVs to the scene, obviously, they've got to have a level of caution. And we see a lot of those situations where there's accidents that result from that. I guess in a perfect world, I would say POV to the station and the rig to the scene. I just think that that's a little bit better as far as accountability. You have a few seconds to kind of get your game face on and talk about what you're going to do. So, but either one of them will work. It's just you got to kind of have discipline so that it doesn't become a freelancing, chaotic. We don't know who's there, what they're doing, and that's really the thing that you've got to work to prevent. But if you can make it work, and depending on how spread out your firehouses are, in some cases you have to do it. And so I don't have a real hard position on either. It's just about how you manage either one, I guess, is the best way to frame it up.
And it comes down to the organizational discipline, really.
Right.
No, that makes sense completely. Yeah. Hey, everybody, there's a lot of freezes going on. It appears to be depending on where you're watching from, because a lot of people have no problem and a lot of people are freezing. So hit the refresh, and I'm sorry if you're in the area where it's not playing good. I really do apologize.
Corley, I feel sorry for you, brother. You're trying to pay attention to me and 1,000 other things. And
No, you're answering great questions, so it's good. I just feel bad for the people it's freezing on, but there's honestly not much I can do if it's freezing in your area and other people are watching it just fine. I can't fix it from here. Chief Dave, I'm going to read it right. DeRico. Dave DeRico says, Chief, is there a way, if any, to professionally and non-confrontationally fix a toxic culture that stems from the top rather than from the rank and file in a small organization? I know you love the question.
I don't have a good answer, Dave. I always say if I could fix fire chiefs, I could cure cancer. And to be honest with you, I don't spend a lot of time investing in the fire chiefs that are fire chiefs now. And it's not bad people doing bad things. My focus is on the next generation of fire chiefs. Hopefully I can give them some tools and some mindset, some things to help them be successful. But, if you're doing the right thing for the right reason and you live that every day, do it. And if you stick to it and people see that you're getting a positive result out of that, more and more people will start to follow. So if you live it and it's valuable and like I say, it's doing good things, just keep doing it. And one by one, it's one person at a time. starts coming over, that's really the best way for it to happen. We always talk about Rob Fisher, who talks about 10% pressure 100% of the time. That's really what it is. But no, I do not know of any magic pill or wand or anything that you can wave that's going to fix a toxic culture that starts at the top. That's just a bad deal. You got to be patient. You got to wait it out. Everything gets better eventually. But you learn things through these periods also. And that's what I would challenge you to do is get as much from this experience as you can. See how people are interacting with one another. Keep this vision in your head of what you think it should look like. And just take little baby steps towards that. And it will happen. It just takes some time.
I always, when I start reading that question, I realize what the question is. I always hesitate in the middle because me and Chief Thompson have said on many interview panels, and that is I would probably say it's the number one question that gets thrown at Chief Thompson. Without a doubt.
I get asked that question 10 times a week. Some poor firefighter will say, "Hey, man, I'm in this toxic culture, and the chief doesn't want to train, and the chief doesn't listen to us, and there's a lack of two-way trust, and the chief talks to us like we're inmates and this and that." And, I'm sorry. I'll be glad to talk to you and listen and lend a sympathetic ear, but I really don't know how to fix that. I really don't. Just do what's right and sleep well at night, and that's really and just stick with it.
Focus on your sphere of control, what you can control.
What you can't do, you can't give in and become part of the problem, or they've won. But the other thing I'm going to say, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, but those of you that are company officers and shift commanders, if you want to have firefighter friendly fire chiefs, you got to put yourself in those positions. You got to step up there and do it. And being a fire chief is not the best position in the fire department. It's certainly got its bad days. It's got a lot of good days. But if you want to make that change and have that influence, you got to position yourself to put yourself. I never wanted to be a fire chief, but I wanted to have a positive influence in the fire service. And one of my mentors helped me understand that the best way to do that is to put myself in this position. And it's, Rick Lasky being one of those. It's proven true so far.
Okay, I'm going to throw some. I like to ask the vigilante questions of the week, and there's been so many audience questions coming at you. I haven't got to one yet, but I want to throw one at you. This one comes from Seth Todd, and it kind of ties back into when we talked about promotion earlier. But vigilante question of the week from Seth Todd says, when it comes to promoting, how can administration change to make sure they're promoting the ones that want positive change and not just the time? Basically, how do you promote the people that want to promote for the right reasons? What's your wisdom on that?
So we have a very unique, we're a right-to-work state, so we can basically do whatever we want. But I have to kind of stay true to civil service rules, because if I get too radical, that'll be the default. They'll go for a civil service vote. So we have a peer evaluation. We have in-baskets. We have a written exam. Something very interesting happened with our last promotional for Station 5. Two of my very well-respected captains kind of went out and talked to the organization, and they wanted to create a promotional process that really focused on our core values of duty, respect, and integrity. And they came to me with a very well thought out plan. And so we pulled the trigger on it. And it had some challenges. I'm not sure it really got the best people. We got good ones, don't get me wrong. But I can think of one example where one of our young firefighters who really just does a lot of great things and is not a great test taker. Every promotional process has a victim. That's just the way it is. So, I think a peer review is very important, because those are really the folks who know the true character of people. I only see people at their best a lot of times, so I'm not a great judge of what goes on in the firehouses except when I'm there visiting. So yeah, I think you can have a combination of things. You obviously want a knowledge and skill component, you want an experience component, you want a problem solving component, and then you want a peer evaluation. I'm a big believer in peer evaluations, and right now I'm looking at what the Texas Department of Public Safety does for their promotions, where you take a written test and it's pass or fail, but that qualifies you to continue on in the process. And then we're going to have a combination of subjective and objective components of that, and try to really get the people who've invested in themselves, they've invested in the organization, but most importantly, they have an attitude of wanting to continue to contribute to the betterment of everyone versus just themselves or any particular project. So it's a work in process. But yes, it can absolutely be done. You know, I'm not a huge fan of the written exam. When I was coming up, that's the way it was in civil service.
Right.
Those who scored the best on the written test got promoted. And I can tell you, that may be fair, but it 100% does not get you the best people in the organization.
Right.
So there's somewhere in between that and just coming off the rails and me picking the people that I like, that you got to try to figure out. And you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to try some things. But I love the peer component of it, because they'll be honest. And if you have a high-performance organization, they're going to want people who are going to meet the standard and not the ones that are going to look for the easy way out or take the shortcuts.
Right on, man. Right on. And that balance between the objective and the subjective, just trying to figure out that balance. Fair versus...
Yeah, it's tough, you know, because everybody thinks, well, not everybody. A lot of people think they're better than they are, right? You know, in their minds, they're a legend in their own mind, but everybody else doesn't see them like that. But to me, it's about investment and sacrifice. What do you invest in yourself? What do you invest in others? And what sacrifice do you make so that others can be successful?
No, absolutely.
And if you can capture that, you're going to have a pretty good process.
So is that peer review element public knowledge? Like, do they get to see what their peers thought of them?
Oh, yeah. So you better be damn well ready to justify your answer, because we've had a couple in the past. And one of our senior firefighters, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, was a victim. And he went to a person who ranked him and asked him. He says, "Oh, well, I should have graded it differently." Well, when you got those things going on, then the system is flawed. We've grown a lot since then. But yeah, it's out there. Everybody knows the metrics. It's not hidden. You know, duty, respect, integrity are our core values. So everything's built around that. And we put out as much information as we can ahead of time through our mentoring process, our hiring process, our indoctrination, all those things come into play. And so it's very public. You know, there's always people who are a little upset about it, obviously. Sure. But I expect those people who do the grading to have the courage to explain their reasoning. And that's part of the learning tool, to help people learn and be more successful the next time they try to promote.
And what I want to know is, because every promotional process I've ever been around, involved in, or seen always has people upset when the results come out. If it's contentious at all, or competitive at all, I shouldn't say contentious, just competitive. So is it more so, or just average, is what I'm asking? Is it?
No, I would say average.
Okay.
I would say average. I mean, I've only had in I don't know how many we've done. I've only had 2 formally contested processes where they actually, formally came forward. Now, there's always a little gripes and whines, and this should have or that should have, but no, I would say feedback when they're asked, why did you grade me like that?
Right on. Okay, just checking. Vigilante question of the week coming at you. This one comes from Craig D. Blake, one of the vigilantes. He wanted to know, 2 of the greatest guides to the fire service are Pride and Ownership and the Functional Fire Company. And I have to agree with you, man. It's very, very, I can't argue with that. Can you take us how your approach to fire service management developed before, during, and after working with Chief Lasky?
I can, and it's a story that I love to tell. So I've worked for 6 organizations, and just to backtrack, I started with Plano, Texas, which is a very progressive, very well-funded fire department, but very traditional in how they do things. So I was raised in kind of a strict culture. You don't sit out in front of the firehouse. You're very much uniformity and all those things. And so that's kind of how I was brought up. And that's the way it is in Texas, depending on where in Texas you work. So I had this mindset, and I was okay with it. I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so I went to work for Bill Strickland after Plano, who was from LA City. He was the ops chief in LA City. This is when I went to work in Arlington. So I had to learn his way of doing things, very much West Coast, which was a great experience. And so I learned some things back down to division chief when I went to work for Rick. But I wanted to be a fire chief with the new mindset that he helped me develop. And so it was kind of a new beginning. And I tell you, it's paid tremendous dividends. In my leadership philosophy, there's a lot of Alan Brunacini. There's a lot of Rick Lasky in there. And so, I am totally different post working for Rick than I was prior to. And it's all in good ways. Really opened my eyes to what the fire service can be.
Right on. All right. I want to get to I want to do the training season because I don't think we've ever talked about the training season. So I want to talk about the training season because right now we're at the beginning of spring practice, are we not?
Yeah, we are. And it's really cool. Again, this was something that started out pretty basic with my vision, and the guys and girls in the organization took it and ran with it. But, I was Rick's training chief for 10 years, and I'm still somewhat involved in training. But here's the problem. Is training most times in the places that I've visited and experienced, there's no continuity in training. It's like, 1 week we're talking about fire extinguishers, and the next week we're talking about high angle rescue, and the next week we're talking about airplane crashes. And those are all important. I mean, drilling is drilling. There's always value to training. But we wanted to kind of have a continuity in the things that we did in our efforts. So the first part was, I don't know, we started 5 or 6 years ago with spring training, and we tied it into baseball. And this was the initial reason for it, is if you look at the science on learning and retention, it will tell you that you start to lose knowledge and skill after about 45 days. Now, it's longer for some, shorter for others, and it's not a huge loss. But the science says that if you don't do something for a year or 2 years, you're going to be adequately unprepared to do those things if you're not recently rehearsed. So the first part of this whole thing that we did was spring training, and that's where for the months of March, we're coming up to it, when pitchers and catchers report, our senior men and women report, and we spend the whole month just focusing on the basics. We go out to the yard, and a lot of times there's 2-a-days. Our senior men and women are the ones who teach it. Our firemen and who should be the best at doing those things. And a lot of times they'll go out at 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. They'll do a 45-minute drill. Then they'll eat lunch. They'll cook hot dogs out there. And then they'll do another 45 minutes after lunch and go to the house. And we'll do that for the whole month of March.
Right on.
And so that's how it's 6 every year. So I'm comfortable as a fire chief knowing that we're not going to do any more than a year without revisiting the basics. So we said, okay, how do we expand on that? So then we get into the training season, and this is where we turn it over to the companies in the best position to know the training needs, the capabilities, and the limitations of his or her crew. So basically from April until August or September, it's company level stuff. They focus on engine stuff and truck stuff, and this is where the truck guys do some engine work and the engine guys do some truck stuff. Nice. So that they're not totally oblivious to what the other does. And then we get into our the Fall Classic, our playoffs, and this is where the battalion chief takes over. So we've done a month of spring training, back to the basics. We've done several months of company level development, and so we get into the off season or the playoffs, and this is where the battalion chief comes in and creates battalion drills. And this is the shift commander's opportunity to see how his or her crew is doing. And so we do a month of that, and we make it reality-based. We get as close to reality as we can. Like I say, we do our ISO drills and all that. And then we come out of that and we go into the off-season. And we look and see what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. We do all the other training, the HR stuff, the specialty stuff. And then we come back around to spring training the next March, and we already kind of have our training plan built in from what the battalion chief saw, and we pick right up. And so what it does, it brings continuity to our training. There's a start and a finish. There's a progression. We focus on capabilities and limitations, strengths and weaknesses. So we're constantly building onto our training. Now, if you go to fireserviceleadership.com to download the mentoring, I also have something on there called Training Basics and Essentials for the Fire Company. And that document will talk a lot about the training season and kind of how it's set up. But it's really about continuity to training.
And I'm sorry, what's really cool is it's based on the baseball schedule. And I'm not even a huge baseball fan, but it makes so much sense when you really break it down like that. Does that make, and it makes sense to firefighters?
I don't know if you saw it. I'll kind of show it to you real quick here. But like they do some cool stuff. So if you can see, that's kind of the ticket for spring training this year. I don't even know. Somebody made that up and put it out there. And so every year we kind of have a cool logo. We try to get people fired up. But it's also a rite of passage. So this year it may be our senior men and women we're doing search, we're doing throwing ladders, forcing doors, and then they're telling the junior guys, say, hey, you're going to be doing this next year, so pay attention. So it's also a rite of passage to get our junior members more involved in training on the basics. But the big thing is that we visit the basics every year, and we never go more than that on visiting those topics.
No, man, that's phenomenal. And the cool part is culture doesn't happen on accident. Like, you don't get year in, year out rituals, language, the artifacts, all of that does not happen on, like the ticket you just held up. That doesn't happen on accident.
No, and it's not hard to get. It's just you got to pay attention to it, and look for opportunities to do those things and create mental models, mental images, and make it personal. I've always said from the first day I taught at FDIC, you got to make training personal. You got to make the why me connection. And training that impacts people on a personal level lasts longer, and it's recalled easier. And so all this ties into the training season. If anybody's got any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll send you what I have on it.
Smoothbore Cartel said, America's Fire Chief, ladies and gentlemen. No, you never get tired of that.
Howard. We decided that's going to be Howard Reinwald as America's Fire Chief. I'm passing that title over to him.
What do you do to the naysayers who kind of roll their eyes? And I know, because they exist, so that stuff doesn't matter, Oh, you make such a big deal about it, but it's always the outsiders who don't understand the value of it. Do you have it, or is it just whatever? You don't get it.
I do. No, you just roll with it, man. So I people will tell you that if you try to please everybody, that's the quickest path to failure. And I'm going to admit this, right, wrong, or otherwise, but when I became fire chief in the colony, I didn't buy into that. My goal was try to please everybody, and this is the reason why. I knew in reality I couldn't, but we're too quick to say I can't please everybody and write people off, right? That's a great out. Oh, well, I can't please everybody. But I have come to the realization that no matter how hard I try, I can't please everybody, and I'm okay with that. So, we're putting programs out there. We're doing things that I think benefits everybody, but I'm always going to have people that don't agree. They don't like it. They're going to fight it. We call it friction, and that's just the nature of the business that we're in. Every organization has them. Every organization will continue to have them. We have them. Everybody has them. And you just try to minimize the disruption that they cause. Hopefully the majority of your organization is on board and moving forward, and you just got to do if you're doing what is right for the majority, then you're going to put yourself in a pretty good position. Right on. I sleep fine at night. I can go into the organization and hold my head up and know I make a lot of mistakes. I do a lot of stupid stuff, but they're never intentional against the guys. I'm never trying to take a shortcut where they're concerned. We try to buy the best equipment. We try to bring in great instructors. We send people out to training. All our intentions are good, and sometimes that's the best you can do.
Nice. No, it's a great answer. Great answer for my question. And I want to know this. I'm going to throw some at you that's coming from previous. So we're going back in time here. John McCoy said, on the peer reviews, do you see much on someone that you see is great all around, but they don't settle well when the peer review comes out? Or has it always been pretty much in line with you?
No. We have seen, most of the time it is, but we have seen some that have surprised me. Because you got those people that 3 months prior to the promotion, they become somebody different, right? They know now that people are looking at them and they become somebody different. So there have been some surprises, but I'll tell you, like I'm getting ready to promote 3 captains and 6 apparatus, 7 apparatus operators, and they're all highly qualified. They're good folks. The process did a good job. Did it do the best job? We can debate that. But typically in all our processes, we've never got anybody that doesn't deserve to be there. We may not have gotten the best person, but we've always promoted people that certainly have earned it and deserved it.
Nice. No, I like it. I like it. Okay. There's so many questions I can throw. How much weight is placed on the peer review? This comes from Thompson Kongmani. Make sure I say it right. How much weight is placed on peer review versus the other parts of your promotional process?
Well, it depends a little bit from process to process, but it'll be from 2 to 7 points. So basically that's the scale. 2 to 7 points on the final score.
Is that a percentile like a 100?
A little bit more. Excuse me.
Is that a percentile like on a 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's about it. It's not hugely an influence, but it's enough that if we got a couple people that are right there in close grouping, that it could make a difference. This last process, it made quite a bit of difference. So I would say it was more on the upper end. But you can adjust that depending on how much you want it to value, but we don't want it to be the determining factor, but we want it to be taken serious enough to where that if you're just a total knucklehead, you're not going to be successful.
Right. No, and especially if you're a knucklehead and you get 0 and someone you're up against gets 5, 6, 7, that's huge in a tight race.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on how many parts of the process there are, of course. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, I love it. Chief, any insight on how to maintain a strong long-term culture after the generation that created it retires?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've committed to that culture, then it's gonna be sustainable. Again, culture is the things that the organization values. So if those things are in place and it's being successful, and you don't have a group that's deliberately working against it, yeah, that's going to be passed on to generation. One of the things right now that we're kind of messing with. I mean, I'm towards the end of my career, and this is not a Thompson thing. I just happen to be the fire chief. But I'm towards the end of my career, and I think one of the things the organization now is trying to figure out how they can maintain what we have when I decide to walk out the door, if somebody inside doesn't get it, if they bring a chief from the outside in. And I've every time I go to a firehouse and say, you guys have got to have something that you can tell that new chief that this is what we want, and you've got to be committed to that, and you've got to be unified in asking for that. So it's going to be interesting to see if that's true, because we haven't experienced that yet. But if the culture, when we opened Firehouse 4, that was the first group of captains that we promoted that really knew no other way. They came up under this chosen culture, and so they're very comfortable with it and very familiar with it. And so is this next generation. And so it kind of takes care of itself. If it really has spread its roots and the men and women believe in it, then it will carry over.
It will take generations to undo for the complaint.
It takes generations to develop, and it would take an active movement. So I can tell you, and this is what I tell the men and women in the organization, if they hire somebody outside of the Colony Fire Department, the first thing to probably go is our single role paramedic program. They'll probably make all those people go to the fire academy because they don't understand it. The next thing to go is probably our engine and truck deployment model, because they think that's a big city thing and they don't understand it. So those things are probably going to go right away. And the organization needs to understand that. And if they like what we're doing, they got to protect it, and they've got to communicate it in a way that the new chief understands how important it is to the men and women that ride the rigs every day, because that's what it's all about.
No, that's strong, man. Strong. What are your thoughts? This comes from Lawrence Wadsworth. and he wants to know, what are your thoughts about lower ranking members doing a review on higher ranking members so you can use that review to improve your performance as an officer?
I've got two thoughts on that. I mean, I'm a big believer in full evaluations, a 360 evaluation, but it's also very tough for somebody to evaluate if you've never done the job. So if I'm a junior fireman, I can certainly lend some insight into what I want my senior man, my apparatus operator, my captain to kind of be. But if I've never held the position, I really don't understand it. And so I kind of struggle with that. I kind of go back and forth. This past time, we did have members that were not captains evaluating captains. And I don't think it worked great. Now, I'm going to really rethink that. I guess that's the best way. What was the gentleman's name again?
Lawrence Wadsworth.
Lawrence. Yeah. I'm kind of in between on that. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer, but there's some difficulties with it. It can work. The thing you got to be real careful of are all the people that have individual agendas. In other words, all they're worried about is themselves. And that ruins everything. When you get those people in there that all they're worried about is them, that spoils everything. And that's sometimes hard to identify. So we're going to spend a lot of time thinking about it before our next process. But I would say there's some pros and cons. But I kind of believe in the back of my mind, it's really hard to evaluate a position that you've never held.
No, and I identify with that because there's so many things I said I will never do that as a captain, or I will never do that and then I got in that position. I'm like, oh, that's why they did that, and now I understand. And so I get that part of it. Is there a way to do a 360 where you're kind of focusing more on the expectations downward, or is it just not possible, or is it baked into the cake? I guess.
No, it is. And we did something for a long time, and this was a city thing, and we stopped it, but it was called a 1-to-1 peer review. And we did them twice a year to where everybody kind of had that ability to talk about the programs and the people above them and so forth. I think that's a valuable tool. Fine-tuning that and creating a tool that really works is the challenge. But no, I think there needs to be that two-way feedback. I mean, I certainly want people to weigh in on how I'm doing my job, but it can't become a personal agenda. That's right. What you really got to be careful of. And like I said, we just got back these results from what they call Empower the Colony. And we had a lot of great stuff on there, but it was very clear the people who answered it who were just worried about themselves and nobody else. And so you got to be able to separate the two.
Nice. Very good answer. Tony Nunez wants to know, when it comes to mentors, do you feel the mentor should be assigned to the new member, or should the mentor be someone that the new member connects with? Which way do you like it?
So I think because you're talking about new members, we assign a mentor. So as we hire new people, we assign them a mentor, and that mentor reaches out and they make the connection. I'm not saying the other way is wrong. I just think it's a little clumsy. If I'm new to the organization, I really don't know anybody. I don't know who the influences are. I really don't know who to approach. So I would say phase one would be to start off as that person has more experience with the organization, maybe in phase 2 or phase 3 mentoring, then you let them pick out kind of their mentors. So that's just kind of how I look at that. I think it just becomes very cumbersome if you don't have that structure.
No, structure at the beginning, especially with the new members.
Yeah.
Love it. Tom Hagemeyer wants to know, how do you pick formal mentors, or what resources are required or are available to mentors? How do you pick them out?
Oh, again, we leave that up to the shift commanders and the company officers. It can't be a fairness thing. It can't be, hey, it's my turn to mentor somebody.
Right.
Because people have been through the mentoring process, and because we have a lot of evaluations we did something called a company contribution exercise. We have the mentor forms, we have task books, we have all kinds of stuff. The company officers and the battalion chiefs together pick who the mentors are. And what we have a lot of times is somebody will kind of show an interest and say, I want to be a mentor. And they'll kind of give them an action plan, Say, okay, well, you kind of need to do these things, work on that. We need somebody who is relevant, who understands the organization, who understands the chosen culture, who's an advocate for the process, somebody who's good with people, who is not going to be a bully or harass them or all that other stuff. So we've been doing it long enough, and maybe I kind of take it for granted, but we got a pretty good idea what a mentor should look like. And I think I addressed that in the packet. But I mean, you just want somebody really at the end of the day who's willing to invest in others and do it for the right reason, not for them. Do it for the other person and for the organization.
Coming at you with more culture questions. Are you good for it?
Absolutely, man.
All right.
Andrew, hang as long as you can.
Okay. Andrew Feskins wants to know, as a new company officer, what is the best way to set the culture for a crew that kind of lacks an identity?
Oh, that's a great question, and identity is a key role. So don't think of it in terms of culture right off the bat. Think of it again as a vision of success. And I would challenge everybody who's listening to this program, if you haven't done it, and this is the scenario I paint, go out to your deer lease, go get your glass of bourbon and a cigar and go out and sit by the fire with a blank piece of paper and start to define yourself. And that first thing is to identify that vision of success. You got to start there. And Corley, we've talked about this. In my office, there's a whiteboard. And on the top of it says, start with the end in mind and why, if not this, what?
Yes.
And that really sums it all up. So you can't pursue a chosen culture if you don't know what you want the culture to value. So you got to ask questions like, what are we doing good? What are we doing bad? What do we want more of? What do we want less of? What do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? Okay, you got to start there. But once you start to package that and start to refine it and start to develop this vision of success, okay, and you say, all right, I'm a captain of a new engine company. I've just been promoted. I've got some senior guys and some junior guys. I need to take that time to understand myself, what I want that engine company to become. And once I do that and get that clarity, then I can start identifying what the culture needs to value. So if I'm a new captain, and let's just say I want us to be the go-to fire crew in the city.
Right on.
When things are looking bad, I want the incident commander to go, hey, Engine 22, I need you up here to solve this, right? Well, then I can start identifying, we're going to train every shift. We're going to develop two-way trust in one another. We're going to be here for one another. We're going to be more constructive than we are destructive. We all have a role. We all have a purpose, and we're going to define those roles, and everybody's got input. So all those things start to become part of what the culture is. But if you don't know what success looks like, you can't do any of that. And so that's where you got to kind of start and just take a piece of paper and say, what are my subculture to value? But if you don't, once you have that knowledge in your head, then your conversations, your interactions start to reinforce that. You ask questions that are going to help you develop that. You listen and you hear things and you pick out things to see if you're going in the right direction or maybe you need to make an adjustment. So it all starts with that vision of success and trying to find, and then you got to answer the why. Everybody wants to know the why. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then the big question is, if not this, what? If we don't pursue this culture, this chosen culture, what is the alternative? And that's the ugly truth. We can talk all night, and I always say this in my classes. Those of you listening, there's probably somebody out there who thinks I'm the biggest jackass that ever walked on planet Earth, all right? Disagree with everything I'm saying, and that's fine. I'm not going to hold it against you. But my challenge is going to be, if not this, what?
Right. And that's the question you answer. If not this, what?
In a leadership role, you have to be that influence. You have to provide that structure to the people that look to you for leadership. You owe that to them. That's when you put on the speaking trumpets. That's part of the agreement. Like when we promote somebody, and I'm doing this right now, I'll call them into my office and I read a sheet of things and I offer them the promotion. I say, I'm offering you the position of captain. And they have to physically accept that, and I shake their hand. But what they're doing is saying, yes, I accept the promotion, but I'm also accepting the responsibilities that go with that promotion.
Nice. Coming at you from DPR, First Line Fire Service Training, Dennis Riley says, a visionary question, What do you see the suburban American fire service looking like in 10 years, and what should today's leaders be doing to prepare for those changes?
Well, I love Dennis, man, and I'll tell you, Dennis is doing some great things. So I have this new keynote that I do called Reviving the Mission Mindset.
Right on.
I think our fireworks are going to increase because of lithium-ion batteries, building construction, denser populations, weather stuff, just social responsibility of using drugs and all the other things. So I think our firework in the suburbs is going to increase. We are going to be held more accountable, and you've heard my analogy, and I did a hump day on Wednesday where we talked about this. There's a lot of things that we should be learning from our brothers in blue and active shooters. If we don't step up to the plate and be professional firefighters and start focusing on risk acceptance versus risk avoidance, that model is not going to work. If we keep looking for more excuses to fight less fire versus justification to fight more fire, our citizens, and bet money on this, I'll bet my reputation, our citizens are going to tell us how we're going to fight fire.
Right.
To those out there who are saying, oh, we're not going to do vent enter search, that's too dangerous. You don't have that option. If you put fire department on the side of your rigs, and when somebody calls 911 and you go out the door, you better damn well be ready to enter that building and do a search at some place other than the front door, especially if you're telling people to go to their bedroom and close the door. And we got to get that figured out. I'm very disappointed in parts of the fire service who are trying to make this job something less than what those have come before us have made it. I can tell you, because I asked, our citizens have very high expectations of firefighters. And we need to live up to that. Just like the cops, starting back with Columbine, they didn't going to Parkland, Florida, and then with Uvalde, the citizens are saying, by golly, if you're a police officer, you're going to get your ass in there and save my kid.
Yes.
Why is it any different with the fire department? Somebody explain that to me. It's not. We have a responsibility. We all put ourselves in this position, and we all need to take a professional level of risk. Now, that doesn't mean killing firefighters for buildings, but there's a spectrum again. There's doing nothing, and there's being absolutely reckless. We need to find the sweet spot based on our capabilities and limitations, and we need to be professional risk takers.
Boom. Dude.
Did I answer that question?
I got my soundbite for the.
I feel like I talked around. Dennis, did I answer that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I will speak for Dennis. Gabriel Blue says somewhere in the IFSTA book just exploded. Spot on. Amen. Preach.
Thank you for everybody who's taken the time to listen and send in questions. That means a lot. Thank you for that level of interest.
I will absolutely tell you that the scrappers who tune in, not only the quality of the guest is amazing, the quality of the host is pretty amazing. The quality of the freaking broadcast is garbage. So I really do appreciate everybody putting up with it. I really do.
We'll get through it. It's Friday night.
Absolutely.
Friday night.
Amanda Miller said, "Fire church," with an exclamation point. Yeah, Smoothbore Cartel said, "I would listen to Scott Thompson read the phone book."
I'm sorry, brother.
There you go. John McCoy says, "What were the biggest mistakes you feel you made moving from being a coach to being a mentor?"
I don't understand the question. I don't understand the word mistakes. No, I don't think mistakes. I think it's more, what did I learn, John? And is it sure. John?
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I don't think they're mistakes. One is elementary coaching. Any of us have played organized sports and have had coaches in our lives. Coaches can take on a whole lot of different personalities. But again, they're helping with performance issues right away. So let me back up and say this. The most important thing that a fire chief, an assistant chief, division, deputy, battalion, anybody who is a formal position in the organization, the most valuable thing you can do for your people is provide honest and timely feedback. To me, there's nothing more important. You got to have the courage and the mindset to do your homework and not make it personal. Look at behaviors. Don't look at personalities. And that's the most important thing you can do for your people. And if we had all night, I could give you a lot of examples on some of our folks in the organization. So it's not mistakes. it's a learning curve. You know, if I'm going to be a good mentor, I got to be a good coach. So I want to get good at coaching performance. I want to be relevant. I want to be able to bring something to the table at the technique level, the task level, the tactical level, and strategic level. And then that's all about performance, going out the door to a fire or a pin job in an vehicle accident. The mentoring thing comes from maturity and experience, where I understand the organization and I can start to share the ways that you miss some of the things that are detours or potholes and help you position yourself. I always say, position yourself for success and survival in the firehouse and on the fire ground, and prevent yourself from drifting towards failure. So I just don't think I agree with that word mistakes. I think I would say it's a maturity, it's a learning one to the other.
And he clarified.
I don't mean that negatively.
No, he clarified and said, yes, learn.
Yes, yes. So learning is understanding what the chosen culture is and what the organizational values are, and coming up with action steps, not just saying our core values are duty, respect, integrity, but what does that look like?
Right.
And what is being a top-notch engine firefighter, truck firefighter, squad firefighter? What does that look like? And how do I get there?
Strong. All right. That officially gets the questions caught up. So I want to talk about books, because that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Book or books that you think firefighters should be reading. It's been, and this is the crazy part, I didn't realize this, it's been 64, or number 64 was the last time we had a single one-on-one scrap. And
yeah,
so
I was beginning to think you didn't love me anymore.
No, I know. I was surprised when I went back to look to see what we talked about before, because I tried to do a little research. I was like, I can't believe it's been that long, because we see each other so often. It feels like we've done it so much. So anyway,
and I love it.
Book
so the first
books?
one, without any question, is this one right here. The 9 L's. No, Corley, you did a great job with this, and it fits in so many ways. So obviously this, and I think looking at the great work that Amanda does in promoting you, it sounds like this is taking off. So I'm going to say that's number one. But here's something, and I stumbled onto this. I found it at a secondhand book, but I'm reading this now, and it's backwards. It's how NASA builds teams.
Nice.
And NASA is all about standards, and they have a very small margin of error. And they talk about the Hubble periscope and all the other things, some of the Challenger things. So this is what I'm reading right now, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm going through my second read, but this is what I would say right now is probably a good one. So I'm just going to hold it to those two. I mean, I got a bunch of other ones, but that one right now is the one that I'm really going to kind of recommend.
I say, hey, I will tell you this. That's a first. The 9 L's being recommended is a first. I love that. I just realized.
Well, there you go. And it's an honor to do that. So put that on the top of your reading list. And Corley, you've done an amazing job. And thank you. Thank you. I was doing a podcast yesterday. It was a 3-point firefighter.
Yeah, Jake, yes.
And he asked me, he said, what was it like to write the forward? And I said, man, it was such a tremendous honor. And I said, there's a good number of people who say they're going to write a book or they think about it. Then there's a much smaller number who actually start it, and a very small number who complete it, and then a very, very small number who have a product that is worthy of all of our attention. And brother, you've hit that. And so it's a great honor to be a part of that, and I don't take that lightly, just like as I asked Brian Brush to write the forward in mine. But absolutely, the 9 L's is right in there, so I'm going to recommend that, and it's an honor to be the first one to do that.
Thank you, Chief. It was very cool, very cool. Yeah, John McCoy said max points. 100%. Speaking of max points, we have a thing we do. You've done it before. It was called the 5 questions for firefighters back then, and now it's the next 5 questions for firefighters, which you've never answered.
Never answered. Never. I don't know if I've heard them.
That's what I'm saying. I'm getting ready to throw them at you. And
bring it on.
I didn't send you whatever you call it, a prep list, so you don't even know what's coming at you.
This is scratch right here. This is from shooting from the hip.
Here we go. Number 1. Are you? And I'll give you the rules, which is there are no right or wrong answers. It's completely your opinion, and the points are arbitrary, assigned by me with the help of the audience. So, Chief Scott Thompson, are you ready for the next 5 questions for firefighters?
Bring them.
Number 1, what single characteristic makes the difference between a run-of-the-mill firefighter and the top-tier go-to badass firefighter?
I got to go with passion. I got to go with passion. Passion, is a complicated word, but somebody who loves the job, but more importantly, somebody who understands the awesome responsibility that we've been given, and who's going to do all that they can to position themselves to be successful. You know, when I talk about preparedness, and I talked about this the other day, we all fly a lot, and we're being protected when we take off and land by a fire department that's never been to a plane crash before. They've never done it, right? So the passion is the internal drive to say, hey, I believe in this, I love this, and I want to be better at this. And so it's kind of a self-fulfilling, I don't know if prophecy is the best word. It's a self-motivator to say, I want to stay relevant, I want to contribute, I want to invest, I'm going to make sacrifices. So I'm going to say passion framed up in that definition of what passion is.
Absolutely. Just on the word passion, I would give a lot of points. And then with the explanation that goes with it to explain why, and especially if you can tie airport firefighters into it, it's an easy number one, max points. So number two, coming at you. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you were a rookie, I don't know where you were first rookie. I don't know where your first rookie experience was, but if you could go back, okay, at Plano, okay. If you could go back to Plano rookie firefighter Scott Thompson, give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
All right, this is going to rub a lot of people wrong.
I already like it. Go ahead.
I wouldn't take what Chiefs said as seriously. One of the big mistakes that I made as a young firefighter is I assumed that because fire chiefs became fire chiefs, that they were at the top of their game. And so everything that I heard ever come out of a fire chief's mouth, I took that as they are the experts. And I've come to learn that now there's a lot of great chiefs out there. Don't get me wrong. Like I say, I'm a big fan of Brunacini, Bill Strickland, Rick Lasky, a lot of great ones. But what I found out is I was being taught leadership and operations by people who were not successful at leading or being operators in their own system. And that bothers me to this day. And I go to conferences, they don't vet these people at all. They just because they have a bunch of letters behind their name and, you know, that this what appears to be a formal education and a pedigree, that they're successful leaders, and you talk to people in their organizations and find out, So that's kind of a downer and a negative thing, but that's what comes to mind.
Well, I love the answer. I love the answer the most. Hey, obviously when you're younger, you don't know to vet what you're getting it from because you don't know what you don't know. I get that, right?
But it also ties into responsibility that leaders in the fire service have, right? I mean, there's a lot of young firefighters that are listening to us talk, and we have a responsibility to do the best that we can to give them good information. We can't be reckless with that. And I take that very seriously. You know, I always start out by saying my two boys are on a job, and I would not say or do anything that I would not be okay with them being governed by. I take that very seriously. So I try not to ever be reckless with my opinions, my thoughts, my theories, my comments. Unfortunately, not all people are like that. They want to be liked. They want to be popular. They want to be thought of as progressive, and they can't find their ass with both hands.
I love the answer. That's max points already. But I'll tell you the part I love the most is when you said it bothers me to this day, because I can tell that it still drives you in your decision making to this day, and that's strong, 100%. Number 3, what is your favorite training drill?
I got 2 of them.
Okay.
It's tie. The big 5 in the first 5 minutes.
Big 5 in the first 5.
I tell you.
I should have known the answer already, but go ahead.
It's been successful. When I was in Louisville, we started the Big 5, which is 5 topics that you know you're going to do. In the colony in Louisville, the Big 5 were hose, ladders, search, personal protective equipment to include your BA, your thermal imager, your portable radio, and then firefighter, rescue, and survival techniques. So you get really, really, really good at those. And then the first 5-minute drill comes from Alan Brunacini. Alan Brunacini used to say the first 5 minutes will determine the next 5 hours. It's really the first 15 or 20 minutes. But just think about it. If we're really, really good in those basics and we're really good in the first 15 minutes, apparatus placement, size up, all those things, reading the smoke, reading the fire, solid initial incident action plan. We have done everything that we can to put ourselves in the best position to be successful.
Boom. Dude, big five in the first five. I didn't even think about that when I was asking you the question. I was like, I should have known that would have been the answer. And the power of that and the if not this, then what aspect of that. So there you go. Max,
I also think the line of duty debt drill or line of duty book report is very, very valuable. I know there's firefighters alive today because of those drills. Now, I mean, live fire training is very important. I'm not discounting all those, but we're talking about a very specific drill. And the big five and the first five can be live fire training events.
Number 4, what mistake have you learned the most from in your fire service career?
Something that happened very recently. It's happened in the last 2 years. You know, we had a situation in the organization that I've never dealt with before. In other words, I had very little experience with it. I put myself in a position that I never put myself in. In other words, it involved HR, and I asked HR to allow me to solve the problem instead of going to an IA. And when those words came out of my mouth, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I made some bad decisions. The overall outcome was fine. Nobody got fired. Nobody even got written up. But a lot of people look at me different today. I didn't handle it the best way. I will handle it much different if it ever happens again. But I learned a lot of things out of that. I learned a lot of things about myself. I learned a lot of things about the organization. I'll tell you right now, I got to a point where I kind of thought the Colony Fire Department could do no wrong. And that right there is a false assumption. It's made up of human beings. There's no such thing as a perfect human being. So why in the world would I think that 100 human beings would be perfect?
Right.
But that's where I allowed myself to get. And so huge lesson. It's changed me as a person. It's changed me as a leader. And hopefully if I'm confronted with something like that again, I'll handle it a little better.
Love the humility, love the ownership. I don't know the circumstances, but man, I love the answer. And so,
and I'm gonna add another book in there if I can remember it. It's Jason Redman's book, and it's about getting off the X. I can't remember the exact title, but here's a God thing. As I was struggling with all this, I sat through a class that Jason Redman's a Navy SEAL,
right,
who's all jacked up, and he talks around the country, but God put me in that class to listen to that speech, and it's very similar to Jocko. It's about taking ownership. And once I took total ownership of the situation, then we started our recovery process. But it took me a long time to get there. I had a hard time re-engaging with the organization. And so all those things happen for a reason, and all of them are a lesson. So yeah, that's kind of an easy one.
Easy max points also. When you have that much ownership and that much. What I love is I didn't know what I didn't know, and then I learned it, and I never faced it before, and I will do it different next time. And all that takes humility to say all those things, man.
Yeah.
I wish, yeah. Anyway, absolutely. I guess the best thing I can say is max points. Final question, number 5. It is not new. It's the question that will probably never go away, no matter how many times I change the question. It is heavy fire and searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in performing VES?
So you asked me that question once before, and I answered it with VES. And I've thought about that, and I've heard some great engine guys answer it about being on the line. I mean, a majority of my time was spent on an engine. It was kind of a squad thing. We did either or. But I'm still going to have to go with the truck aspect of it. You know, I think the opportunity to make a grab, to put yourself in that position, you know, going back to our system with the engine and truck deployment model, those members that are on the truck and that are on the squad are by design positioned to make those grabs. If there's a survivable or searchable space, we don't decide if they're survivable. And so, you know, that to me is one of the things that continues to motivate me. So I'm gonna have to still go with the search, and having the knowledge and the discipline to act independent of a charged hose line and not under that protection. I'm gonna have to go with that.
Love it. I love it. And that officially makes it 5 for 5 on max points with the answers. The answers, but more importantly than the answers is the reasoning behind them. That really is where the max points comes from, because there is no wrong answers, but to get the max, I have to understand why you said it. And it's not just me. The audience absolutely agrees, as people are saying, spot on, Chief, very cool. Max points. It's okay. Yes, boom, truth, solid advice. Yes, boom. There you go. And that makes it 178 scraps in the books. Chief Scott Thompson, when the audience wants to get a hold of you, because they all will, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Scott at fireserviceleadership.com. So please, I'm a little bit of a procrastinator, like I say, so nag me a little bit, but I'll share what I can and do what I can, and we're all in this together. So my information's your information, and we'll just try to leave it better than we found it.
And go to fireserviceleadership.com and absolutely sign up to the email. You have to do that part. Sign up to the email and then download the mentoring program and the training program. Free resource. All you have to do is give them an email.
And don't give me any credit for the information. Make it your own. The only thing I ask is like I say, is just don't turn it and go out and start charging to teach it, because my goal is to get those in every fire department in the country. And that's just kind of my small contribution to this great thing that we're all doing.
And I'll say one more thing, because I've already said enough. I'll keep on harping on it. The mentoring guide to the fire service. There isn't anything better out there for the fire service. It is the best thing. I'm trying to figure out the better way to say it. There's not anything better out there. Sounds like I'm selling it short, but it's the best thing on mentoring out there in the fire service. And it's free. Go get it. Go get it, read it, and make your department better tomorrow.
Please go get it. And if you have trouble downloading it, email me at scott@fireserviceleadership.com, and I'll email it to you. 2023
is in full effect. Amazing scraps. Scott Thompson brought it today. Cody's coming up on Sunday. To say that's pretty much it. Go to firehousevigilance.com. If you're not a vigilante, become one. $5 a month, this price of a cup of coffee, exclusive merch, exclusive forums, good times. You get to determine the future of the scrap. Vigilante questions of the week, great discussions, all that. Enough of that. Scott, thank you for being a phenomenal guest.
Corley, thank you, brother, and thank you for everybody who took the time to listen in and send in some questions. They were outstanding.
Audience, I've said it 14 times tonight, but you make the scrap a special place to be. Thank you for tuning in live. I love you all. Remember, mutts don't scrap. I hope the tones stay silent unless it is burning. Everybody, stay safe out there. Thanks for listening to the Weekly Scrap. Please subscribe and please share. We'll see you at the next episode.